Okay, wonderful. Perhaps I would like to ask the presenters to briefly respond, and then we can have a few questions from the floor.
So you touched upon a very important point, how to interact, integrate, merge the different sectors or fields. So there are so many aspects to take into account. I missed many of them in my talk, but before we had some exchange. And one question you raised then was about how to communicate. What is happening on the level of translation or communication between these sectors, between the artists and the farmers? Actually, I don't have this question because there is no more separated worlds. So if artists, the case in Indonesia shows it very clearly, artists are long-term partners in this region. They are not jumping in and flying out again. So it's a long-term collaboration or community. They are part of it. So then the language question is not so important anymore. So these partners learn their languages and they exchange on this mutual level. So long-term, it's all about long-term engagement, not just jumping in, doing short-term research or observation and then go out again.
I have no mic, but I don't think it matters. I was really pleased you raised the point about concrete, because in terms of climate change and carbon emissions, the material concrete is one of the greatest culprits. And not only because in the production of concrete, there's massive greenhouse emissions occurring, not only in the erosive capacity of the concrete industry to the soil and natural habitat, but also in that in paving over urban spaces, concrete spaces, we break the water cycle, and we break the water cycle from the carbon cycle. And that is one of the key reasons why we're having climate change, is because that holistic relationship which nature already put there and which functions to keep the temperature of the earth stable is broken. Because concrete simply disturbs water, it puts it out to sea, there's no infiltration to the soil, therefore plants cannot digest and transpire and cool the planet and so forth. So it really is a demon material. Finish.
Perhaps can I ask a question in relation to that?
Yeah.
Now, the material the villagers themselves use are locally sourced, and I would think that they actually cope better with time. Like they don't decline as fast as concrete, and then you said that probably they are better insulate the heat and so forth. At the same time, concrete is a signifier of modernity and class position, so it is also desired often by people in rural areas. So can you tell me about how the villagers feel about it? Do they desire concrete forms?
I mean, definitely, I think that's a good point. I think both the points combined, this is what I was trying to talk about in the end, but then I had to hurry. I think concrete is the devil, but concrete is also here to stay. It's very difficult to get rid of, well, at least in India, the cement lobbies are so powerful. It's very difficult to get rid of, that mode of construction. Also, it's equated to modernity, development. Definitely, it's linked to aspirations very much. I feel the role of, I think, different disciplines, different professionals here is important. So when I go and I say that as an architect, as a trained architect, when I say that actually this is really great, how you're building already is a good sustainable mode of building, which works well for you. It keeps your house cooler in summers and warmer in winters. I think that sort of validation is also required to kind of reverse the sort of aspirational value that concrete brings. Yeah, but it's at the end of the day, who wants to live in mud houses today? I mean, how many of us would want to live in mud houses? They do require.
It's cool.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like a lot of us have had the privilege of going through, a lot of access to resources before realizing that actually what we prefer is, something which is much more sustainable. And
in the age of extinction, a
Yes.
desire,
Yeah.
wrong practice cannot be justified by
Yeah.
desire.
right, but it's also about access to information that you and I have had all our lives
Well, we
to
know
realize
that,
now.
but that we just have to keep trying.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that how we bring this information to people who have not had the same access that you and I have had is really key.
I quite agree.
Yeah, and that's the challenge.
That's
I guess. Yeah, I mean, I guess it comes down to this question of how we theorise desire, because this came up earlier today about consumption and how everybody wants certain things. I'm sorry to say this to people who are still smoking, but everyone loved to smoke at one point too, and then knowledge and a challenge to the tobacco industry meant that a lot of people have given it up. So, I mean, is the innate, what is innate and what is educated? And it's true, we've had education systems that have thrust development and modernity down the throats, particularly of rural people. So you have children in rural Philippines going to school learning about computers, not learning about organic agriculture. So where there's a lot of issues that desires are created, and if we start from that point of view, then I think we need to challenge all of the things that we think we want. And that needs to happen. I mean, the sand is running out. It is a finite resource, actually. And unless we want to keep dredging more oceans, and it's an issue of national security too now. If you try and get enough sand for concrete, so I think the architecture profession has a lot to answer for here, and needs to really question their love affair with concrete. Sorry, I just made a film about a bamboo bridge, so that's where I'm coming from.
I completely agree with you. All I'm saying is the processes of how to go about that are really, really sensitive, because I think, you and I go and say that
it's about
coming from a
processes of subjectivity change and how does that happen, and we could have a richer discussion about all the many determinants of that, I think, which we started to.
Just the funny thing is that now some of the fanciest new construction projects are based in wood. In Japan, they're building a skyscraper out of wood and so on. But again, now the concrete gets sourced to the rural areas because it's also falling out of fashion.
That's right. I mean, the idea of renewable materials obviously should be key to our thinking.
Urban wants to be rural, and rural wants to be urban. And I think that's the sort of scenario we live in.
But I don't think that there is a way in which people can have health and communication in a rural setting. It's not as if, health, shelter and food are the two things that are, most challenging in the world, and the most energy intensive, etc. And the other things we can look after, health and education and other things. But trying different ways of providing health and shelter, food and shelter are the big challenges, and we've got lots of things to learn from other traditional practices. Not saying we go back to them, but we modify them and work together with new technologies. It seems like there's some wonderful challenges here for young people to be innovating in this field and integrating, which I'm sure you're doing already. So, yeah.
I would like to add, just to specify my question. My question is actually, is there any new subjectivity emerging from the interactions between artists and the farmers in the long-term, projects?
And sports people.
And the sports people. Okay.
This is a tough one, in the sense that, elite athletes typically live a highly urbanized lifestyle. So to actually have them go into a rural village and sleep on the floor, this would bring severe discomfort to most first world peoples, right? So that hasn't yet happened. And I would imagine this would have to be a long-standing effort, but there is now at least greater awareness, and I take on that responsibility. I'm quite committed to this project because I think as athletes, you're brought up with a sense of fairness. You know, you are brought up with at least the ideology of games and sport. There are rules, which when you violate, you know you lied, you know you cheated. So I'm saying I think being an athlete is an aesthetic process, right? And just like being an artist is, you know, and this is why I think it's so crucial it is so crucial to an aesthetic education where the skills you learned are embodied rather than abstract, right? So the things that you learn, you learn for life, and you don't even think about it, right? It's about indeed subjectivity formation. It's about cultivating a certain disposition, and I think that is what is lacking in our education, which is, I think, functionalist. So in this project, before I started it, I had a critique of sport. Don't get me wrong. I had a radical critique of sport based on the political economy of sport. But I realized that the phenomenology of sport, the personal experience of sport, is like the artistic, is like perhaps what an artist experiences. Right? I'm not an artist, unfortunately, or what a musician experiences. And those feelings are deep. So this is what inspired me to do this. I think athletes are capable of feeling this, right? So with Tukta, at least, her experience is that these people want to give. They want to give something back. They just don't know how. So I then hold our educational institutions. I hold the academic institutions. I hold the universities, right? Responsible for that, for being, for having monopolized the knowledge industry. Right, so the goal is I'm also working on decolonizing the university and you know in various ways, and so really the goal is to lessen our reliance on universities as sites of knowledge production. So
I think you touched an important point: the education. So the educational systems for what are artists or sport athletes or scientists trained to. They are not trained to transdisciplinary reflections, but only to follow the rules of their fields or disciplines. So, and what we are looking at is the intermingling of the sectors or the fields to get the strengths of out of it to change, not to follow the rules of a certain discipline, but to question the rules of this discipline and to find solutions in between. Not talking about concrete or mud, but maybe there is something else.